Alright, let's take a look at another CodeWars exercise. This one's called Convert PascalCase into SnakeCase. We're going to get a string in PascalCase, which looks like several words, the first letter of each one capitalized and nothing in between. So for example, YouTube, we capitalize the Y and the T, and there's nothing in between. This is used in the C# programming language, and that's where you're most likely to see it. But in Python, we use SnakeCase, which has everything lower, and then in order to tell the difference between two words, you put an underscore. Converting from one to the other mostly involves keeping things the same, because if you're a lowercase letter or a number or something like that, you just stay the same. The only ones that change are uppercase letters that get squished, and then they add an underscore, unless they were at the beginning. So we'll see how we handle that. Let's give it a try. The classic way to do this kind of thing, not just in Python, but any language, would be start with an empty string and then build it up and then return it. So let's start like that, even if we change halfway through. In the middle, we're going to look at each character of this string and say, oh, that's a capital. I'm going to shrink it down. That's a lower. I can go ahead and try to shrink it anyway because there's no change. And then occasionally add an underscore. So whenever you go one thing at a time, it's a loop. And in Python, we're going to say for, and then we pick whatever name we like. I'm going to call it char because these are characters. And then what are we going to do each time? Well, somewhere along the way is going to be result plus equals, because we're going to add to our result. And definitely it's going to have char.lower in there. Char.lower is the lowercase version of the character, which if it's already lower, that's fine, it doesn't change. If it's a number or a star or whatever, that's fine, it doesn't change. And if it's upper, that's where it actually matters. But before we do that, probably before we do that, we want to take a look and say, well, if it is upper, we also want to throw in the underscore. And I say before because the underscore goes before the new word starts. So let's say if char dot is upper, and just like we have methods lower and upper to change it, or not really change it, but give us a new one that is a modified version, we have methods called isUpper and isLower, which give you a Boolean, true or false. So we can say if it's upper, we add the underscore. And that's pretty good. If I test that right now, it's going to be almost right. And we can see like this is really close to this. This is really close to this. But it added an underscore at the beginning, because when the, I'll see the test cases over here, when the test controller or the movies and books begins, we have a capital right at the beginning, and following this plan, that gets an underscore. But PascalCase doesn't start that way. So we could add a bunch of stuff in the middle to be like, okay, if it's the first one, we do one type of thing, and if it's the middle one, we do another type of thing, and that would also mean we have to keep track of where. Right now there's no way to tell. We'd have to add some extra counter to the loop. And I don't like that. It seems too complicated for this simple thing. So there's some other possibilities. One is we could just skip the first character, do it independently, and then use this loop on all the rest. That would work fine. It would just end up adding one line. Or what I'm going to do, my preferred version, I don't know if it's better, but it's just the thing that comes to my mind, is to just go ahead and do it like this and then peel off that underscore at the last second. So I'm going to say result.strip underscore. At the end, when I return that, I'm going to take off the underscores at the edges. Strip is a method that is very useful when you're bringing in data from inputs or spreadsheets, they very commonly have a space accidentally at the end of something or at the beginning, and it's hard to see because it's invisible, and it might mess you up if you're saying like, does this username equal this other username, and they look correct but one of them has a space in there. We can strip that off, and now if I hit test, I'm going to pass most of them. But there's one I don't, which is int object is not iterable. When it tries to go on a loop here, apparently that variable name, that parameter name, is lying because it's called string, but it's not always a string. It says if the method gets a number as input, it should return a string. Okay? So just like the last thing, I could add a bunch of ifs in the middle and say if it's this, do one kind of thing, if it's this, do another kind of thing, and I don't prefer that, so I'm going to say, what if we just ensure that the thing called string actually is a string, and if I put str around it, it'll handle those integers. It won't handle every single possible type. If we give it a really wrong input, then it might not be able to stringify it, but for this one it will, and we'll pass these basic tests. Okay? Now, this is not the only way to do it, but it's the quick version that works if you are kind of making it as you go. If we wanted to make a nice second draft, we could change it around. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that what I would say is to take this stuff, which is like the core action transformation of the data, and you put that front and center using a list comprehension or a generator expression or something like that. Let's take a second to do that just for fun in order to get the same answer in a nice, concise way in maybe 1 or 2 lines. You don't have to, this is fine, but I just want to get a hint of what we're going to see when we look at the other people's solutions. So let's imagine that I'm going to do 2 steps. 1 is what we do to a single character. 2 is how do we spread it out over all of them. So what do we do to a single character? I think when I was describing, I was calling it squish or smash or flatten because you're bringing down the uppercase, you know, and sometimes they spread out horizontally by adding that underscore. I'm going to call it squish. Okay, that's just a made-up name. It's not real. Flatten is a name of a function that already exists, so I don't want to take that. So I'm going to say, maybe it gets a C for char, for character. And I'm going to say this stuff, right? So like, if char dot is upper, else nothing, and that's a little ugly, plus char dot lower. Now, one thing I'm going to do just to shorten it is the is upper thing can act as an integer because booleans are integers. False is 0, true is 1. So if we just do times, then that makes that a lot more confident, straightforward, instead of if, blah, 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 all over the place. And then we just return that applied to everything. I guess we still have to do the str thing, and we still have to do the strip thing. So it's not very pretty, but I do kind of like the 2-liner where this is front and center instead of being like indented 4 levels deep in the middle and hidden. I like to say this is the thing we're doing, and everything else is just how and when and where. What did I do? Oh, I called it char, but I called it C. Usually lambdas will go with a single letter variable because it's meant to be quick and a 1-liner. Of course, you can use whatever you like. So that works, and it's not different. It's doing exactly the same thing. Let's see other people's solutions just to get an idea. Now, some of them use RE regular expression, which is a way to search through text or get substrings and extract parts of text. It's wonderful, but it's pretty hard to read when you see slashes and dots and weird syntax. So we can learn that in the future, but for now we'll skip over that one. This guy is doing the thing I mentioned where you start the loop on the second letter so that you don't have to worry about accidentally putting an underscore. That's great. This one is doing almost exactly what I did in my final version, just throwing that expression in here instead of a separate function. And there's an L strip because strip looks at the left end of the string and the right end, and in this case we're only worried about the left, so they have one called L strip, and by the way they have one called R strip to do just one if you want to save the computer a little bit of work. It doesn't even have to look at both ends. This one is the longer written out loop doing the same thing. Hey, we look at each one, branch off, do we do this or do this, and end up accounting for every case. There's another regular expression, which is different, by the way, because we're achieving the same goal through different means. You could learn how. We'll save it for later. This one takes the honest, straightforward string case as one outcome, and then the str as like, okay, by the way, if it's not a number, or if it is a number, we'll have to treat that separately. So you could probably see some different ones. This looks kind of nice, and find out if anyone really surprises you, but most of them are going to end up doing generally the same stuff. There you go.